The city of Novastar was covered in silver lights, tall towers reaching for the sky like frozen giants. On Christmas Eve, snowflakes fell slowly, mixing with the glow of neon signs and sky bridges where people hurried to their destinations. From a distance, Novastar looked like a dream, a place where wealth and machines had built a perfect future. But when one came closer, the dream was not the same for everyone. Adrian sat in his quiet hovercar, watching the streets as he was driven home by the autopilot system. The inside of the car was warm and polished, but his heart was heavy. People often called him the most successful man in Novastar, a billionaire, an inventor, a pioneer of machines that had changed the way the city lived. But in his mind, success had lost its meaning. His wife was gone, and no amount of money could bring her back. All that remained was his little daughter, Myra, waiting at home. The hovercar floated past the bright markets of the upper city. Shoppers walked with gift bags, laughing, their voices echoing like bells through the glass walkways. But Adrian felt no joy. He remembered how, years ago, Christmas meant warmth, laughter, and family around the fire. Now it was only decorations and business deals. He leaned back in his seat, staring at the falling snow. His daughter Myra was only 7 years old, yet she often looked at him with eyes that seemed older, wiser. She missed her mother deeply, though she rarely spoke of it. Adrian knew he had been burying himself in work, thinking that building new machines and running his company would distract him from grief. But every night, when he came home, the silence of the house reminded him of everything he had lost. The hovercar left the upper levels of the city and descended through the layers. Here, the lights grew dimmer, the buildings less polished, and the walkways colder. Adrian usually avoided this district, but the autopilot had chosen the fastest path through it. From the window, he saw cracked walls, small fire barrels burning in alleys, and people wrapped in torn coats. It was a part of Novastar he rarely thought about, a part his machines had indirectly pushed into the shadows. For a moment, he felt a twinge of guilt. His inventions had created great comfort for the wealthy, but they had also replaced countless workers, teachers, and builders. Many of them now lived here, below the glowing towers. He shook his head, telling himself that progress was never without cost. Yet, deep down, he wondered if the cost had been too high. The hovercar stopped at a signal. Adrian looked out and noticed a woman sitting on the frozen pavement. She wore a faded coat, her hands pressed together for warmth. Her skin was dark, her face tired, but her eyes were open and watching the snow fall with a strange calmness. People passed her without stopping, as if she were invisible. Adrian stared longer than he expected. Something about her presence held his attention. In the glass reflection of the car window, he saw himself well-dressed, wealthy, comfortable, and then her, shivering in the snow. The contrast cut deep into his chest. He was about to look away when his daughter's soft voice came from the seat beside him. "Papa, why is that lady sitting outside? Doesn't she have a home?" Adrian turned to Myra. Her big brown eyes were filled with innocence and worry. She pressed her small hands against the glass, looking at the woman with curiosity and sadness. Adrian hesitated. He had no answer that would satisfy a child, no truth that would sound gentle. He sighed and looked away, hoping the signal would turn green soon. But the woman on the pavement kept staring at the falling snow. Not begging, not asking, simply existing. And somehow, that made it worse. She seemed like a reminder that the city's progress was not shared by everyone, that beneath the tall towers of Novastar, many were left behind. The hovercar began to move again. Adrian leaned back, but his mind was restless. Myra's question echoed in his thoughts, "Why is she outside while we are warm?" By the time the car reached his tower, he was no longer thinking of his success or his wealth. He was thinking of the woman in the snow, of Myra's eyes, and of the silence that waited in his home. Christmas Eve had begun like every other night for Adrian, cold, quiet and full of empty success. But somewhere deep inside, he felt that this year, something was about to change. The night in Novastar was colder than usual. Snow gathered on the corners of buildings, and thin sheets of ice covered the lower walkways. Adrian's hovercar had reached his glass tower, but the image of the woman sitting in the snow did not leave his mind. As he stepped out of the car, Myra tugged at his hand. "Papa," she whispered, "that lady looks so cold. Can we help her?" Adrian froze. He wanted to say yes, but the words caught in his throat. His life was full of meetings, machines, and plans. He had never stopped to think of what to do when his daughter asked him a simple question about kindness. He looked down at Myra. Her face was small, her cheeks red from the chill, but her eyes were bright and honest. He could not ignore her. "Wait here with the driver," Adrian said gently. "I'll be back soon." Before Myra could ask more, Adrian stepped back into the hovercar and gave a new command. "Take me to the old district again," he told the machine. The car lifted into the air and turned back toward the place where he had seen the woman. As the car floated down, Adrian felt something he rarely experienced: nervousness. He was a man who spoke to world leaders, who led thousands of workers, who made decisions that shaped the future. Yet tonight, the simple act of speaking to a stranger sitting in the snow made his heart beat faster. When the car landed, he stepped out and walked slowly toward her. The woman was still there, sitting in the same spot, her arms wrapped around herself for warmth. Snowflakes clung to her hair. She noticed him coming and straightened her back, as if trying to look strong even in weakness. Adrian stopped a few feet away. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence of the street made the moment heavier. "Good evening," Adrian said at last, his voice careful. The woman looked at him. Her eyes were calm, though tired. "Evening," she replied softly. Adrian held out a small packet he had brought from the car, a wrapped meal from one of the city's fine kitchens. "Here," he said. "Please take this. It's warm." The woman looked at the food but did not move. Instead, she shook her head slowly. "I don't want charity," she said. Her voice was gentle but firm. Adrian blinked, surprised. "It's not charity. It's just Christmas Eve. No one should be hungry tonight." She gave a faint smile, though her eyes were sad. "Christmas Eve doesn't change anything, sir. Tomorrow, people will walk past me the same way. I don't need gifts. I just need someone who will listen." Her words caught Adrian off guard. He had expected gratitude or refusal, but not this: an honest request for something as simple as being heard. "What is your name?" Adrian asked quietly. "Rosa," she said. He nodded. "I am Adrian." "I know," she replied. "Everyone in the city knows the face of the man who builds the machines." Her words carried no anger, only truth. Adrian felt a sting in his chest. He knelt slightly so he could look at her without standing above her. "Tell me then," he said. "What do you want me to listen to?" Rosa's hands tightened together. For a moment, she stayed silent, as if deciding whether he was worth trusting. Then she spoke. "I used to be a teacher," she said slowly. "I loved books, stories, and children's laughter. But the schools no longer needed us. Machines teach faster, they said. Machines are cheaper, they said. And so, we were pushed out." Adrian's throat felt dry. He knew it was true: his company's inventions had made human teachers almost unnecessary. Rosa continued, her voice steady but filled with quiet pain. "I searched for other work, but doors closed everywhere. Some of my friends left the city. Some lost hope. I stayed because I believed someone would remember us. But the city grew brighter, and we grew more invisible." Her words were not shouted. They were not angry. They were simply honest, and that honesty cut deeper than any anger could. Adrian lowered his gaze, ashamed. Rosa looked up at the sky where snow kept falling through the beams of neon light. People think we want money. But money doesn't heal the heart. What we want is to be seen, to be remembered as human. Do you understand? Adrian felt something shift inside him. The woman sitting before him was not just a stranger on the street. She was the voice of all the people who had been left behind while he built his empire. Yes, he whispered. I think I understand. For the first time in years, Adrian felt small not because of failure, but because he realized the weight of what he had ignored. He wanted to say more, but his throat was tight. At that moment, Myra's voice came from the car behind him. She had opened the window and was calling softly. Papa, is she coming with us? Adrian turned to look at his daughter. Her face glowed with hope, her eyes fixed on Rosa. Rosa, hearing the child's voice, smiled gently for the first time that night. Adrian looked back at her, torn between hesitation and an unfamiliar desire to do something different. In that silent moment, something began, not just an encounter, but the start of a change that would reshape all their lives. Snow drifted down in gentle waves, covering the cracked pavement where Rosa sat. The neon lights above painted the flakes in soft colors, yet nothing could warm the silence between her and Adrian. He had given his name. She had given hers. But now her words hung in the air, pressing against him harder than the winter cold. Adrian was not used to silence. In meetings, people filled every pause with praise or requests. At home, silence meant loneliness. But here, with Rosa, silence meant truth waiting to be spoken. Rosa lowered her eyes to her hands, which trembled from the cold. Do you know what it feels like, she asked softly, to watch the world move forward without you? To see everything you once gave your heart to be replaced, and no one cares. Adrian did not answer. He wanted to deny it, to say progress was necessary, but the words would not come. Because he did know. Not in the same way, but in his own way. He had once watched life leave his wife's eyes, and no invention, no progress, had brought her back. He too had felt powerless, forgotten by fate itself. Rosa continued, her voice steady though her eyes shone with pain. Children used to run to me every morning. They laughed, they asked questions, they argued about silly things. I thought I was shaping their future. But one day, they said a machine could do it faster. A screen replaced me. I became unnecessary. Adrian swallowed hard. He could picture it, rows of children staring at glowing panels, no warmth, no gentle words, no human guidance. He had believed it was efficiency. But now, hearing Rosa, he saw what had been lost. My friends tried to fight it, Rosa said. Some shouted in the streets. Some begged for smaller roles. But slowly, people stopped listening. Progress drowned our voices. She looked at Adrian, her eyes piercing him like a blade of ice. And your inventions were part of it. Her words struck deep. Adrian's chest tightened. He wanted to defend himself, to say he never meant harm. He wanted to say he only wished to improve life. But Rosa's calm, honest tone left no room for excuses. She was not accusing him with hate, she was simply telling the truth. And that truth was heavier than anger. You see me sitting here, Rosa said, spreading her hands slightly. But there are thousands like me. Some were builders, some were healers, some were teachers. The city forgot them all. We don't want pity. We want dignity. We want someone to look at us and remember we are human. Adrian's heart ached. He thought of Myra, safe and warm in the hovercar, watching them with curious eyes. What would she learn if he ignored Rosa? That people outside their tower did not matter? That comfort belonged only to those who could afford it? He could not bear that thought. For the first time, He lowered his proud posture. He sat down on the cold stone edge of the walkway, beside Rosa. The chill bit through his coat, but he did not move. He wanted to feel what she felt, even if only a little. Rosa glanced at him, surprised. "Why are you sitting here?" "Because you're right," Adrian said quietly. "I've been blind. I built machines that helped the powerful but forgot the weak. I told myself it was progress, but now I see it isn't enough." Rosa studied him, as if weighing the truth of his words. "It's easy to speak. Harder to act." Adrian nodded slowly. "You're right again. Words are not enough." He looked toward the car where Myra sat, her face pressed against the window, her small hand waving as if to encourage him. "But maybe tonight is the beginning." For a moment, Rosa's tired face softened. She followed his gaze to the child. A gentle smile touched her lips. "Your daughter has kind eyes," she said. Adrian's throat tightened. "She misses her mother. I have given her everything money can buy, but not what she truly needs. She needs warmth. She needs people like you." Rosa tilted her head, confused. "People like me?" "Yes," Adrian said, his voice firmer now. "People who carry stories. People who know pain but still speak with honesty. That is what my daughter should learn, not only from machines." The snow grew heavier, falling in soft layers across the silent street. Rosa looked away, her expression unreadable. "I don't know if I have anything left to give," she whispered. "You have already given," Adrian said, his eyes steady on her. "You gave me truth tonight. And it broke my heart in the best way. Because now I can't go back to who I was." Rosa blinked, her eyes shining with moisture. For the first time in a long while, someone had listened, truly listened, not with pity, not with empty promises, but with a heart that seemed ready to change. Adrian stood and reached out his hand to her. She hesitated, looking at his gloved palm, then at his face. His expression was not prideful or commanding. It was simply human. Slowly, Rosa placed her cold hand into his. Behind them, Myra's small voice called again. "Papa? Can she come with us now?" Rosa let out a soft laugh, gentle and surprised. Adrian smiled faintly and helped her to her feet. In that moment, the cold street felt less empty. The night was still dark, but something new had begun, a spark of humanity in a city that had forgotten what it meant. Adrian knew her words would stay with him forever. They had broken his heart, but in the breaking, they had made space for something greater, the chance to change. The hovercar hummed softly, its lights glowing against the falling snow. Myra's little face was still pressed against the window, her wide eyes filled with curiosity. She had been waiting, watching her father and the woman outside for some time. When she saw Adrian take Rosa's hand and help her stand, Myra smiled brightly. Adrian guided Rosa slowly toward the car. Her steps were unsteady, not because she was weak, but because she was not used to being treated with care. The cold had numbed her legs, but there was something warmer inside her now, something she had not felt in a long time, dignity. When the door opened, Myra's small voice rang out like a bell. "Papa," she said, "can she come with us now? She looks cold." Adrian froze for a moment. Rosa looked at him too, uncertain. There was an unspoken question in both their eyes. Was this just a moment of kindness, or was it the beginning of something more? Adrian bent down to Myra's level. "Why do you want her to come with us, Myra?" he asked gently. The little girl tilted her head. "Because she's alone. Mama always said no one should be alone on Christmas." Those simple words cut deeper than anything Rosa had said earlier. Adrian felt his chest tighten as he remembered his wife's voice, soft and warm, saying the same thing years ago. No one should be alone on Christmas. He turned to Rosa, who stood quietly, her eyes lowered. She was trying not to intrude, but her trembling hands gave away her longing for warmth, for kindness, for a place to belong, even if just for one night. Adrian reached for the car door and held it open. "Please," he said softly. "Join us. At least for tonight." Rosa hesitated, then met Myra's gaze. The little girl's smile was pure, without judgment or pity. That smile was stronger than Rosa's doubts. Slowly, she stepped inside. The car's heater wrapped them all in gentle warmth. Rosa sat carefully, her hands folded in her lap, as if afraid of touching anything too fine or delicate. Myra leaned closer to her and whispered, "Hi. I'm Myra." Rosa's lips curved into a small smile. "Hello, Myra. I'm Rosa." For the first time in a long while, Rosa's voice held a touch of softness. Myra's innocence had broken through the heavy walls she carried. As the hovercar lifted into the night sky, Adrian sat quietly, his thoughts spinning. He watched Rosa from the corner of his eye. Her coat was thin, her shoes worn, yet her posture held quiet strength. She was not begging, not clinging, she was simply present, like a reminder of all the lives he had not seen before. Myra leaned against Rosa's arm and asked, "Do you like stories? Mama used to tell me stories at night." Rosa blinked, her throat tightening. "Yes, I love stories," she said gently. "I used to tell many of them to children." Myra's face lit up. "Can you tell me one later? Please." Rosa hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. I will." Adrian watched the exchange with a heavy heart. His daughter had found something in Rosa that no machine or tutor could ever replace: a sense of human warmth. He had spent years surrounding Myra with comfort, technology, and safety, yet what she longed for was something far simpler. The car reached the tower. As they entered the grand lobby, the staff bowed politely to Adrian, their eyes flickering with surprise at Rosa's presence. Adrian ignored their stares. He guided Rosa and Myra into the elevator. Inside, Myra looked up at her father. "Papa," she asked, "why don't more people help others? If it feels nice to help, why don't they do it all the time?" Adrian's throat tightened again. He wanted to answer with something logical, something about fear, selfishness, or the busyness of life. But looking at Myra's innocent face, he realized none of those answers were good enough. "Because sometimes," Adrian said slowly, "people forget what it means to be human. They see the lights and the towers, but they forget the people in the shadows." Myra thought about his words. Then she said, "Maybe we can remind them." Her words were so simple, yet so powerful that even Rosa turned to look at the child with wonder. Adrian nodded, his voice quiet. "Yes. Maybe we can." When they reached the top floor, the doors opened to a warm, glowing home. A tall tree stood in the living room, decorated with silver lights and small stars. Presents were neatly placed under it, but the space felt empty despite its beauty. Rosa stepped inside, her eyes wide. She had not seen such comfort in years. Yet what moved her most was not the wealth but the sight of Myra dancing around the tree, laughing for the first time that evening. Adrian stood near the doorway, watching them both. A thought grew inside him: his daughter's laughter had returned, not because of gifts or riches, but because of Rosa's presence. That realization struck him harder than any business victory ever had. Later, as Rosa sat with Myra by the fire, telling her a simple story from her teaching days, Adrian listened quietly. The warmth in their voices filled the house in a way that no decoration or machine ever could. He realized then that Myra's innocent question was not only about Rosa, it was about himself, about the man he chose to be. His daughter was watching him, learning from him. And what she learned would shape her heart forever. That night, Adrian knew, he could not return to his old life. Something had to change, and it had to begin with him. The warmth of the tower's living room glowed with soft golden lights. The tall Christmas tree stood proud in the corner, its silver ornaments reflecting the gentle flicker of the fireplace. For years, Adrian had decorated the tree for Myra, but it had always felt hollow. Tonight, though, the room felt different. Rosa's quiet presence brought something that money could not buy. Myra sat beside Rosa near the fire, her small hands tugging at Rosa's sleeve. "Tell me another story," she begged. Rosa smiled faintly. She had not told stories in years, not since her classroom days, but Myra's eager eyes stirred old memories. "Once," Rosa began softly, "there was a little girl who loved the stars. Every night she would look at the sky and make wishes. She believed the stars listened to her, even if no one else did." Myra's eyes widened, glowing with wonder. "Did her wishes come true?" Rosa nodded slowly. "Not always. But sometimes, the stars answered in ways she did not expect. And that was enough to keep her heart strong." Myra clapped her hands happily, leaning against Rosa's arm as though they had known each other for years. Adrian watched from the dining table, his heart heavy yet full at the same time. He had not seen his daughter laugh so freely since her mother's passing. It struck him how quickly Rosa had brought life into the house simply by being herself. The kitchen staff came quietly to announce that dinner was ready. Adrian looked at the table, set neatly with shining plates and warm food. He had ordered the best dishes, but he knew meals meant little when shared without warmth. Tonight, however, the table did not seem empty. "Rosa," Adrian said, his voice gentle but firm, "please join us for dinner." She hesitated, glancing at the glowing plates as if they were too fine for her. "I don't belong at a table like this," she whispered. Adrian shook his head. "You belong here more than you think. Tonight, you are not outside. Tonight, you are with us." Myra jumped to her feet and grabbed Rosa's hand. "Please come. It will be fun." Rosa could not resist the child's pull. Slowly, she allowed Myra to lead her to the table. She sat down carefully, as though afraid of breaking something, but Myra grinned and pushed a plate toward her. "This one is yours," she said proudly. Dinner began. The dishes were rich, the flavors warm, but the true feast was in the conversation. Myra chattered happily, asking Rosa about her childhood, about the games children played when she was young. Rosa answered with patience and warmth, her voice steady as she recalled old memories of laughter, friends, and family gatherings. Adrian listened in silence, struck by how natural it all felt. His daughter was smiling again, not because of gifts, but because of human connection. Rosa was not a guest of pity, she was part of their evening. At one point, Myra asked a question that made both adults pause. "Rosa, do you have a family?" Rosa's smile faltered, but she did not hide. "I had one," she said softly. "But life carried us apart. Some are gone, some are far away. Now, I am mostly alone." Myra frowned and reached across the table, placing her small hand over Rosa's. "You are not alone now. You have us." Rosa's eyes filled with quiet emotion. She had not expected such kindness from a child, and it warmed her heart more than the food ever could. Adrian cleared his throat. His voice was low but steady. "She's right. You are not alone tonight." Silence followed, but it was not heavy. It was gentle, filled with unspoken understanding. For the first time in years, Adrian felt the weight on his chest begin to lift. After dinner, Myra ran to the tree and pulled out a small wrapped gift. "This was for Mama," she said quietly, her voice sad. "But I want you to have it, Rosa." Rosa gasped softly. "Oh no, Myra. I can't take something meant for your mother." Myra shook her head, her eyes firm though watery. "Mama would want me to share. She always said Christmas is about giving." Slowly, Rosa accepted the gift. Inside was a simple ornament shaped like a star. Rosa held it carefully, her fingers trembling. "Thank you, Myra," she whispered. "This means more than you know." Adrian watched the exchange, his heart breaking and healing all at once. He realized his wife's spirit still lived through Myra's kindness. And tonight, Rosa had helped bring that kindness forward again. When bedtime came, Myra clung to Rosa. "Promise you'll tell me another story tomorrow." Rosa hesitated, but then she nodded. "I promise." Myra smiled in contentment and went off to her room, leaving Adrian and Rosa alone in the quiet living room. Adrian looked at Rosa, his voice soft but clear. "You've given my daughter something I could not. For that, I am grateful." Rosa shook her head. "I've given nothing but words." Adrian leaned forward. "Sometimes words are the greatest gift. Tonight, you reminded us what Christmas means." Rosa lowered her gaze, touched yet uncertain. Adrian knew then that this evening was not just chance. It was a decision. He could no longer close his eyes to the people outside. If one woman's presence could bring such warmth, then perhaps he had the power to spread that warmth far beyond his walls. And he decided he would. Morning sunlight spilled across the tall glass windows of Adrian's tower. The snow from the night before still covered the city, but the world looked softer, brighter. For the first time in many years, Adrian awoke with a sense of purpose instead of emptiness. Down the hall, he heard Myra's laughter. When he stepped into the living room, he found her sitting with Rosa, who was patiently braiding the girl's hair. They looked like old friends, sharing quiet conversation. "Good morning," Adrian said. Both turned to him. Myra smiled happily. "Papa, Rosa knows so many stories. Can she stay with us a little longer?" Adrian's chest tightened at the question. He had not planned for this, but he already knew the answer. "Yes," he said softly. "As long as she wishes." Rosa looked up in surprise. "Adrian, I cannot stay here. Your life is too different from mine." Adrian shook his head. "You don't understand. Last night, I realized I can't continue living in this tower, pretending the world outside does not exist. You opened my eyes, Rosa. And I need your help." Rosa frowned. "My help? What could I possibly give you? I own nothing." "You own something greater," Adrian replied. "You own experience, truth, and a voice that carries weight. I have resources but no understanding of what life is like beyond these walls. You know it better than anyone. Together, we could change things." Rosa studied him carefully. His tone was not one of pity or pride, it was sincere, steady, and filled with determination. "What exactly do you mean?" she asked. Adrian walked toward the window and looked out at the city. The towers rose like shining spears above the lower districts, where smoke and hunger still lingered. "For years, I built machines that gave comfort to the rich but stole work from the poor. I told myself it was progress. But progress means nothing if it leaves people behind. I want to build something new, something for the forgotten." Rosa stood slowly, moving closer to the window. "Do you really believe that can be done? The city doesn't listen to people like me." "They will listen to me," Adrian said firmly. "But I don't want to speak alone. I want your voice beside mine. I want you to guide me. Not as a project, not as charity, but as a partnership." Rosa's eyes widened. She had never expected a man of his wealth to speak such words. For a moment, she felt as if the heavy weight of invisibility had lifted. Myra skipped to their side and pressed her hands against the glass. "Papa, can we make schools again? Real schools with teachers, not just machines." Adrian placed his hand on her shoulder. "Yes, Myra. That will be the beginning." Rosa looked at the child's bright face, then back at Adrian. Slowly, she nodded. "If you truly mean this, then I will help." But we must start with the basics: food, shelter, and dignity. Before schools, people must feel safe again. Adrian smiled faintly. Then that is where we begin. Over the next few days, Adrian and Rosa sat together at the long dining table, turning simple ideas into detailed plans. Rosa spoke of the struggles she had seen: families sleeping under broken bridges, children growing without guidance, elders who felt abandoned. Adrian listened carefully, noting every word. "You see what I cannot," Adrian admitted. "Your truth gives these plans life. And you," Rosa replied, "have the power to make them real." They decided to build community houses, warm shelters where people could eat, rest, and learn without cost. These houses would not be run by machines alone, but by humans who understood kindness. Rosa insisted on that point. "No screen can look into a child's eyes and see their sadness," she said firmly. "No machine can comfort a soul. Only people can do that." Adrian agreed. "Then people will be at the heart of it." One evening, Adrian called a meeting with his board of directors. The men and women around the long table looked at him in shock as he announced his plan. "You wish to give away resources to the poor?" one director asked, almost disbelieving. Adrian's voice was calm but strong. "I wish to invest in humanity. If we continue to ignore them, we lose not only people but our future. Machines cannot carry hope. Only humans can." The board murmured uneasily, but Adrian's authority was absolute. They could not refuse him. When the meeting ended, Rosa stepped out from the shadows of the room where she had been listening. "They don't all believe you," she said. "They will," Adrian replied. "Once they see what we build." Back at the tower, Myra asked excitedly, "Papa, when can we visit the first house?" "Soon," Adrian promised, kneeling beside her. "We will make sure no one has to sit in the cold again, like Rosa did." Myra hugged him tightly. Rosa watched the scene, her heart stirring with emotions she had long buried. She had come into this house as a stranger, yet now she felt as though she belonged not as a guest, but as part of a family and a dream. For the first time in years, Rosa dared to believe that change was possible. As the night deepened and the city lights shone outside, Adrian looked at Rosa and said, "This is only the beginning. Together, we will remind the world what it means to be human." Rosa held his gaze. In his eyes, she saw not just wealth or power, but something rare: sincerity. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope. Snow drifted softly over the city, covering the streets like a blanket of peace. 1 year had passed since that fateful Christmas Eve when Adrian had first met Rosa outside his tower. The world around them had changed in ways that no one had believed possible. At the edge of the city stood a tall brick building with warm yellow lights shining through its windows. Above the door, a simple wooden sign read, "Community House 1." Inside, laughter filled the rooms, and the smell of fresh bread carried through the halls. Children gathered around long wooden tables, eating bowls of hot soup while volunteers moved about with gentle smiles. In one corner, a group of elders told stories, their eyes sparkling as children listened. For the first time in years, people who had felt forgotten sat together with dignity. Rosa walked slowly through the hall, her eyes shining with quiet pride. She remembered the bitter cold she had once endured on the streets, and the night Adrian had stopped to speak with her. That night had changed not only her life but the lives of so many others. "Rosa," a young girl called, running up to hug her. Rosa bent down, hugging the child close. "Do you like your new shoes?" she asked softly. The girl nodded eagerly. "They don't hurt my feet anymore." "Thank you." Rosa smiled warmly. She never thought she would be part of something like this. Yet here she was, guiding volunteers, listening to stories, and giving hope to those who had none. Meanwhile, Adrian stood outside the building, watching the snowflakes fall. He wore a simple wool coat instead of the expensive suits he once favored. His wealth was still great, but his heart had shifted. No longer did he hide in his glass tower, distant from the world. Now, he stood among his people. Beside him, his daughter Myra tugged at his hand. "Papa, look how happy everyone is. It feels like a big family." Adrian smiled at her words. "That's exactly what it is, Myra. A family. One that stretches across the whole city." They stepped inside together. The warmth hit them immediately, along with the sound of voices rising in cheer. Volunteers handed out gifts: simple scarves, hats, and books. Nothing was extravagant, but each gift carried love, and that was worth more than gold. When Rosa saw Adrian enter, their eyes met across the hall. She walked toward him, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "You should sit," she said kindly, handing him one of the mugs. "You've been working too hard." Adrian accepted it, his breath clouding in the cool air before sipping the warm drink. "I don't feel tired," he admitted. "Not anymore." He looked around the room. "This gives me strength." Rosa nodded. "It gives all of us strength. You gave us the tools, Adrian, but the people built this place. And it is only the beginning." As the evening drew on, the community house grew even more alive. A choir of children began singing softly near the fireplace. Their voices rose like a gentle blessing, carrying across the hall. Myra clapped her hands and joined them, her clear young voice rising above the rest. Adrian felt his eyes grow wet as he listened. He thought of the years he had wasted building machines that only widened the gap between the rich and the poor. But tonight, he saw that the future could be different. Rosa noticed his silence and asked, "What are you thinking?" He turned to her. "I'm thinking that 1 year ago, I was a lonely man. I thought wealth could protect me, but it only built walls around my heart. Then I met you, and your words broke those walls. You told me what no one else dared to say, that my progress was empty without humanity. And you were right." Rosa looked down, her voice quiet. "I only spoke the truth. And the truth saved me," Adrian replied. Later that night, when the children had gone to rest and the elders shared warm drinks near the fire, Adrian stood before the crowd. He raised his hand, and the room fell silent. "My friends," he began, "tonight is not only Christmas Eve. Tonight is proof that we are never too lost to find each other again. This house is not mine, it is ours. It belongs to every hand that built it, every voice that believed, and every heart that dared to hope." Applause filled the room. Tears glistened in many eyes. For the first time in years, the forgotten felt seen. Rosa stepped forward and joined him at the front. "We will not stop here," she said firmly. "Together, we will build more houses. We will bring warmth to every corner of the city." The crowd erupted in cheers. When the night was nearly over, Adrian, Rosa, and Myra stepped outside. The snow was falling heavier now, coating the world in white. Myra reached out her hand, catching snowflakes on her glove. "Papa," she said softly, "this Christmas is the best one ever." Adrian knelt beside her, hugging her close. "It's the best because we finally remembered what Christmas is about: giving, sharing, and never leaving anyone behind." Rosa watched them with gentle eyes. She had once thought she would never find a place in this world again, but here she was part of a family, part of a dream, part of a future that shone brighter than any star. For a long moment, the three of them stood together in the falling snow. No longer divided by wealth or poverty, no longer strangers. Just people bound by hope, love, and the courage to begin again. And so, on that Christmas Eve, a billionaire, a homeless woman, and a little girl showed the city what humanity truly meant. It was not wealth, nor power, nor inventions that saved them. It was the simple truth that hearts, when opened, could change the world.